Having a nice collection of wargaming terrain to fight your battles on does wonders for making your games feel more special. The thing is, wargaming as a hobby isn't particularly cheap, and understandably, a lot of people rather spend their hard-earned cash on more models for their armies, rather than terrain. In this series of videos, I'll be reviewing some of the different options out there to help you decide which terrain is right for you. Welcome to the Grimdark Gamers channel. I'm GM Gregor, and in this video I'll be reviewing my collection from TTCombat, a terrain manufacturer from the UK known for their large range of MDF products. My wife and I were relocating countries, and we needed a cost-effective way of replacing the terrain that we were leaving behind. The main reason we chose TTCombat was the price. Games Workshop terrain is excellent quality. If you know of any other manufacturers that produce terrain that is on par with Games Workshop, please let me know in the comments, but for now, my personal opinion is that they certainly produce the nicest looking terrain on the market. But, as it so rarely does in the miniature wargaming world, nice rarely means cheap. At the time, terrain made from medium density fiberboard was all the rage, so we decided to give it a go. Anyway, enough preamble. Here are my finished boards. One is themed as a ruined imperial city, and the other can be used as an industrial zone or hive world. I've been using these gaming boards for a little over 3 years now, so I've had time to consider the pros and cons of this terrain. So let's start with the pros. First up is the price. MDF Terrain is a lot cheaper than plastic, and TTCombat's terrain is very competitively priced. For example, the Manufactorum Sanctum Administratus from Games Workshop is £50. A similar sized ruined corner piece from TTCombat, such as the Gothic Corner Ruins B set, is only £11.95. This is a huge difference for just one terrain piece, so you can imagine how large the savings can be when building a whole board full of terrain. If you need to get a board up and running without spending much money at all, TTCombat has you covered. A quick post-edit note, TTCombat do periodically update their range, and whilst this specific corner ruin doesn't look like it's currently available, you can find plenty of similar looking, excellent products for around the same price point. Another great aspect of the terrain from TTCombat is how varied it is. I am particularly fond of the non-ruined versions of Imperial buildings, so you can actually build a city board representative of the start of a war rather than the middle of one, as is usually the case, and I'm personally looking forward to adding a few of these into my collection at some point. Despite not looking as detailed as the plastic Games Workshop kits, from a distance the terrain looks good, and when you put it all together like this, it pulls off a convincing looking board that doesn't get in the way while you play your games. Finally, I've also personally had good customer service from TTCombat. Despite needing, at the time anyway, due to the convention only discount, to be made to order and then shipped overseas to the United States, my terrain arrived within the expected time frame, and thanks to the flat pack nature of the terrain, arrived in perfect condition. Hopefully, you can tell I'm quite fond of this terrain. However, now we need to discuss some of the cons because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. TTCombat is the only MDF terrain manufacturer that I've built kits from, but I have heard anecdotally that they're a budget range entry-level product in the world of MDF scenery kits. Whilst I don't have the experience to compare them to other MDF terrain manufacturers, I can certainly believe this claim. The major drawback to these kits is that there is a distinct lack of quality control in the laser sculpting of the parts involved. At least there certainly was when I made this terrain 3 years ago. When making the different kits, rarely did two parts fit together as well as they should. As hobbyists, we have become spoilt in recent years at the ease of which kits can go together, but the stuff from TTCombat was reminiscent of kits I used to build when I started this hobby in the late 90s. Most of the time, the parts would end up fitting together with some minor modifications, but on at least one occasion with every single kit, I had to end up performing large corrective work to ensure it went together. This was work that included cutting away the sculpted in pegs, or creating my own and then cutting out slots for my new pegs to fit into. On a personal level, this wasn't too bad. I have over 20 years of hobby experience to fall back on, but it was certainly bad enough that I would elevate the difficulty level of these kits from beginner to about moderate. If you've just bought the one kit, then this is a minor niggle and nothing worse than anyone who's put together an Airfix kit has suffered from. But When you have 2 tables worth of terrain to put together, this problem quickly becomes frustrating and a grind to get through. Unfortunately, it does seem that this is a result of a lack of quality control, because the misaligned or missculpted parts were not consistent even across duplicate kits. Eventually, these problems were all overcome, but it's something you need to be prepared for going in. The other criticism I have is a general problem with MDF Terrain, although you can file this under "you get what you pay for." While this terrain looks great from a distance, which is ultimately what counts when you're playing a game, there's no denying that up close the terrain is a little bland. There's just a simple lack of texture and detail when compared to an equivalent Games Workshop kit. It's night and day different. One advantage of this, however, is it means it is super quick to paint and get on the table. Looking at the individual terrain pieces, I'm pretty happy with each one as a finished product. With an airbrush, I managed to paint all the terrain and boards in under 2 weeks when working a couple of hours each evening, and the terrain has served well in the game since. In the future, I'm going to be looking into updating my gaming terrain, and this will involve revisiting these old pieces and adding more detail and texture to them to help them pop more on the table. Despite the drawbacks, I'll definitely get more terrain from TTCombat, as ultimately I like their products. I do plan on adding some Games Workshop terrain as the garnish to the entree that is my TTCombat stuff, but overall I'm happy with what I've purchased. The only products I wouldn't buy again are the individual tiles which make up the terrain boards. In my opinion, they look great, but I find them to be a bit of a hassle. Laying them out individually takes a fair bit of time in what is already a long process of setting up a board to game on, and they're very easy to knock out of arrangement, which then disturbs your terrain setup. To be fair, TTCombat does provide some MDF lock pieces to help clamp the tiles together, but this adds a considerable amount of time to set up and tear down, so personally I don't bother, and at the time I just try to be as careful as possible when playing. These days I play my games on a mat. Also, while I'm not bothered by this myself, some people may not like the fact that these boards can make a bit of noise when rolling on them. Well, that concludes my review of my terrain from TTCombat. Despite my criticism in regards to the quality control, you can't really argue with the price point of their products, and ultimately, with a bit of patience, you do end up with a nice looking board to play your wargames on. I will definitely buy more from TTCombat in the future, especially as I know what to expect now. If you think you can put up with the frustrations I've mentioned and are looking to build a good looking table for a budget, then I recommend giving this company a look. If you have any experience with TTCombat or other MDF manufacturers, then please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially in regards to more recent purchases, as it's possible the quality control from TTCombat is better these days. I'll be doing more terrain reviews and box openings in the future, so if that's something you'd like to see more of, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.